Hey YouTubers, it's Charlie. This is going to be my non-spoilery X-Men Apocalypse video, so here we go. There won't be spoilers in this. There were a couple really big things that they had to do in this movie. You have to remember it's the third First Class movie. It's kind of like the reboot franchise. They retuned some of their continuity with Days of Future Past, but this is still the third movie, so they wanted to pull some of the A-list X-Men off the bench, which meant recasting younger versions of a couple characters we've seen before, and try to include some of the big fan favorite things. So there are a couple moments in the film that are definitely for the fans that they didn't really need to include in there. So I'll talk more about those in my spoiler video, but I think we can all agree that the best part of the film was Quicksilver. Now, under normal circumstances, after a performance like that, like you just walk away going, oh my god, that was the greatest thing ever, please give me more of that, they would do like a Quicksilver spin-off movie. But I don't know if Fox has any intention to do that, because as good as Evan Peters is, he's really like the punch-up guy in this movie. Like, it's a really serious movie, and I think that's one of the problems of the film, in that Deadpool was so successful, and it took the piss out of all superhero films, so that every serious superhero film that came after felt like it was taking itself too seriously. That's why you may have felt a little weird during Batman v Superman. It took itself way too seriously. This film takes itself incredibly seriously, but they do have those Quicksilver moments of levity. There is a lot of humor in the film, but it's like the diametric opposite of Deadpool in the X-Men film universe, because it is a very serious film. So I think that hurt the film a little bit, but it's not entirely the fault of the movie itself. It has a lot to do with the character that they chose to do, Apocalypse. He is not a subtle character. He is like the end-all, be-all of evil mutants. So you bring him out, subtlety flies out the window, and all the good character stuff lives in subtlety and nuance. So Apocalypse is simultaneously one of the coolest things about the movie and one of its biggest problems. Like, if you think about some of the best superhero action moments from this year, they were really subtle moments. Like when Spider-Man was trying to explain to Tony why he wanted to be a superhero. He was starting the Uncle Ben story, but then got all choked up. They pulled off this amazing exposition in a really subtle, offhanded way. So they didn't have to go through the tiresome process of retelling the entire Uncle Ben Spider-Man origin story. And I feel like they tried to do a really creative job with showing Apocalypse's origin story at the beginning of this movie, but I felt like they skipped over a lot of really important stuff, almost too much important stuff. There's a lot of logic in the film that doesn't really add up, and I think a lot of that has to do with how they rushed the film out, so they really could have used an extra year to get this film out. One of the problems of making big films like this is that they're like an assembly line. You have to make them every 2 years, so whether you're ready or not, you have to start shooting at a certain date. So you have all these interesting characters that they brought onto this film. There are a lot of awesome characters, but whenever Apocalypse is on screen, he's just almost impossible to act with. Most of the scenes that I liked least in the film were scenes where he was doing exposition, like when he was speaking through Charles to the rest of the world, when he was going through the process of making each of the horsemen. One of the most important things about big films like this that usually gets lost, like one of the biggest complaints, is that the characters feel kind of weak. You have to be able to sense what the emotional truth is of each character. And there are a lot of characters that you totally get. You definitely understand where Magneto's coming from, why he chooses the side that he chooses. So the strongest characters are naturally like the biggest actors in the film. Jennifer Lawrence, James McAvoy, Michael Fassbender. They all have strong character arcs, and they're still a big part of the franchise. None of them has left the franchise yet. But Apocalypse, like, you just totally don't understand where he's coming from, other than he hates humans and wants to rule the world. False idols. The weak have taken over the world. So I felt like they didn't do a really good job of rationalizing his emotions, but part of the problem with that is that there haven't been that many good stories that have parsed that out. Even the comics that have told his backstory, there are some pretty cool Apocalypse origin story comics, even they don't do a good job of spelling out his motivation. He's the most powerful mutant in the world, and what do the most powerful people want? More power. That was one of the big complaints against Marvel Comics in the 90s, and a lot of this borrows from 90s comics, in that characters were doing really awesome things. They were big action set pieces, amazing artists, but the stories just weren't that great. And I think this suffers from some of the same problems, but it's still a really fun film. I just feel like there's a lot of different pieces that aren't meant to fit together, and they're trying to make them fit, and it just feels a little disjointed. So I feel like the easy fix here is to get a more appropriate villain for the characters that you have, and I feel like they set that up in the post-credits scene. I'm not going to explain what that is just because it's super spoilery, but they've already teased who the big villain is of the next movie, so definitely make sure you stay for the post-credits scene. But I'll tell a funny story here. So Oscar Isaac is the person under the Apocalypse makeup. If you couldn't tell, that's Poe Dameron. Part of the problem with that, you can't tell that it's Oscar Isaac underneath the makeup, and he's an amazing actor. But there's this story about how, when he was acting with all this stuff on, all the prosthetics, Bryan Singer would tell him to go half Skeletor, full Skeletor, three-quarter Skeletor. So for example, when Apocalypse is being really subtle, he's like, okay, dial back the Skeletor, and then you have these big action set pieces where Apocalypse is going crazy, using his powers to his full might, and Bryan Singer's like, give me full Skeletor. So anytime you see Apocalypse going crazy on screen, just think of Skeletor fondly. So you should definitely check the film out. There's just so much stuff going on that tells you what's coming next that it's really important. I'll talk all about that in my Easter egg video, so be sure to subscribe to get that. I'll totally post that tomorrow. They've already got a couple other films they're working on. There's a New Mutants film, there's going to be an X-Force film, there's going to be a Deadpool sequel. Definitely hoping to get Deadpool in some of these other movies soon too, but I think the most crossover that he's going to have with a proper X-Men film will be in the X-Force movie. I will say probably one of the best things they can do for the future X-Men films, the main X-Men films, is to just do a creative refresh behind the scenes. Usually it's not a good thing when the same person is responsible for producing and directing every single film in a franchise, and I think that's one of the things that Marvel has done really well. They've got to that rarefied air where they're totally not afraid to find someone who just does something really amazing and weird and give them $150 million to do it. And I don't think that the X-Men franchise is quite ready for that, but I think they'll get there once they do some of these other films like New Mutants, X-Force, more Deadpool sequels. I think they'll get a little more comfortable with doing really fun, weird stuff. Let me know in the comments though, what was your guys' favorite thing about the movie? And please use spoiler tags if you're going to be super specific. Easter egg video is posting tomorrow. We will talk about all the things. While you guys wait for my next video to post, you can click here for my Flash Season 3 video, and you can click here for all my Captain America Civil War Easter eggs. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. Let's high five. I'll see you guys tonight.